We know there's always challenges whenever there's an American election, but as we have before, we're going to be ready to deal with whatever gets tossed at us and make sure we're defending Canadians' interests and opportunities in this strong relationship.
The Prime Minister today looking to strike a new tone on Donald Trump, harkening back to his 2016 messaging, seeking to reach out to the GOP's likely presidential candidate and protect the Canada-U.S. relationship. How do the feds plan to go about doing that? I spoke with Canada's ambassador to the U.S., Kirsten Hillman, right after she briefed Cabinet. Hi, Ambassador. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Vashi.
Thanks for making the time for the conversation. I wanted to start off because I have noticed, and we were talking before about how you've been going to many different parts of the country in the U.S. Is it, based on your observations and your conversations, or how possible is it that Donald Trump could become president again?
Look, I mean, people read the same polls and news that I do, so I think that it is certainly possible. I'm not going to be maybe making predictions on that because that's not my expertise, but I certainly think that it's possible. I think we will see. There's still a long time to the election, but a lot can happen, and Canadians need to be, and Canada needs to be thinking of both scenarios, a Biden White House or a Trump White House.
And I do want to talk about your role in the approach and in the federal government's approach to navigating that in a moment. But I also wanted to, and I'm not sure if you're going to be willing to weigh in, but the way in which it's been framed, his possible re-election, is that it poses almost an existential threat to democracy. Do you share that view? Do you share that concern even that this wouldn't be like a regular election?
It's an important election. There are a lot of dynamics in the United States that are challenging around how the last election happened, around the fact that there are cases going on with the president right now. But these aren't the things that I focus on, and I think it's really important for me, but I think it's really important in order to do my job properly, that's not where my focus is. My focus is around what are the issues that are at play in this election for all of the different parties, right? And we're both parties, but all the different potential candidates. We have candidates that are in the White House. We're going to be vying for the White House, but we also have 435 members of Congress, the House, that are up for re-election, 34 senators, 11 governors. 5 of those are on border states. All of those individuals are important for the health and prosperity of Canada and U.S. And so I'm focusing on the totality of the issues that all of these different elected officials are raising in their communities and are their priorities.
So what would you identify then as the priority issues based on those observations? Like, what are the ones you're seized with based on the commonalities that you derive from the totality?
Yeah, so economic security and prosperity, the economy, job one. For everyone, Democrat, Republican, wherever you are in the country, crisscrossing. I was in Arizona recently. Canada's made some really important investments in Arizona, and I had been invited to Arizona maybe 6 times before I was able, just based on my schedule, to get there. It was incredible, you know. The governor invited me to her State of the State address. I spent a lot of time with her and other lawmakers. The mayor of Phoenix, the CEOs of the major business community in Phoenix are super bullish on Canada because we have a lot of business ties and investment in Phoenix, and Phoenix companies are investing in Canada. So number one across the board is the economy. I think energy security, energy transition, electrification, battery technology, ensuring that Americans have the critical minerals that they need for their electrification goals. Again, actually a surprisingly nonpartisan issue, because in Republican regions of the country, they're interested in doing mining. They're interested in getting in on the economic opportunities that energy transition is going to provide. National security is always top of mind for Americans. Homeland security is always top of mind for Americans. And so that's about the Arctic, right? What's going on in the Arctic, patrolling, fentanyl, the fentanyl crisis, the borders on our coasts, patrolling those borders. These are the kinds of things that people care about.
So in the past, you've had a lot of success, and the Team Canada as a whole has had a lot of success in appealing to logic on many of the people who either surround a president or who are in state legislatures or who represent their states in the Senate around the economic interconnectedness of our two countries. But this, we've seen in the past the White House can still make decisions that have a huge impact on that relationship and can impede our economic progress as a result. How worried are you that there are fewer of those people to appeal to with logic, given what we see unfold around the Republican nomination, the people who are around Donald Trump now, to be blunt?
So I am not convinced that when it comes to these issues that are core to people in the communities in which they live, so their economic security, their job prospects, their energy security, the cost of energy, that anything is going to change. Because people...
Why?
Because it's about achieving those goals for those communities and not about sort of political partisanship when it comes to the relationship with Canada. So if Canada is able to provide a secure source of energy, if Canada is able to provide inputs into their supply chains, or...
But we've done that before, and the former president levied tariffs.
But he took them off.
Eventually, it still had an impact.
It did have an impact, but he took them off. And he took them off because those people around him who were hearing from the Americans who were his supporters said, hang on a minute, my factory is suffering. I went to Nebraska during the last Trump administration and visited a plant that was providing agricultural machinery, and 80% of the machinery that they manufactured was exported to Canada. And we were working on getting NAFTA through and the 232 tariffs off. And the owner of that plant talked to their local representative, and their local representative got their voice into the White House. And I heard the feedback from the White House about that trip to Nebraska.
Do you feel that those voices will still be able to convince him,
even
despite all the things that he's saying in this campaign?
I do. I do.
And do you have, what underlies that confidence?
Because ultimately, not all decisions are made by the president and the administration, right? The president has certain levers, he has certain powers, but they do have, as we see, because often it doesn't, unfortunately leads to gridlock in the American system, but he has a lot of pushback from Congress when he's trying to make long-term changes through legislation. There are also people on his team that we know well that are still advising him closely in the trade.
Far fewer of them than used to be there.
There are fewer, but some of them, the rational economic players are still in his orbit, and that's important to us, and we're going to call on those relationships.
And is that the plan, just before I let you go?
Yeah.
What does it look like over the next 10 months for the federal government, led by this team of yourself, Minister Champagne, whom we just interviewed, and Minister Ng?
So I think the work that we're going to do with this Canada sort of arm of the task force is to get out to Canadians and talk to them about their relationships and what they're doing in the United States. Because one of the things that's clear is that Canadians are implicated in every sort of community and aspect across the country, whether they're investors or they're business owners or they're farmers who are working with their meat processors across the border. They're everywhere. And so one of the goals of this group is to get out there and talk to those Canadians and have those Canadians lean into the relationships that they have in the United States and make sure that their interlocutors in the United States, their partners, their joint researchers, or whoever they are paying attention to how the relationship with Canada is a source of strength for them, is a source of strength for them in their community, in their business, for their national security. Because ultimately, that's what the U.S. cares about. They care about U.S. prosperity and success, as they should, as we care about that for Canadians. And as long as we can continue to give a compelling message that we're contributing to that, I think that's an important hedge against any volatility that might come. And the other thing I would say, too, and I think it's important to remember, is we really successfully negotiated a trade agreement under President Trump. And he still takes pride in that trade agreement that he negotiated. And that's a success for him. That is a success for us. So we have a track record of a joint, success from a challenging but ultimately a very effective modernization of our trade agreement. And I think that's going to be really important too to keep in mind should Trump re-enter the White House.
Okay, on that note, I have to leave it there. Thanks so much, Ambassador.
Thanks.
Good to see you.